Hi there. This is PT McNiff from the Long Take Review podcast, and you are listening to the Rebel Base Card podcast. Great pull, kid.
Can I help you?
Gorman?
Visiting friends?
Why do you ask?
I'm curious by nature.
I have friends everywhere.
Bon, what do we have for Gorman?
You've seen the show, but sometimes you just need another helping.
I want more, and I know I shouldn't.
Because the Star Wars universe creates more canon and questions than you can imagine.
I don't know, I can imagine quite a bit.
Even after our questions have been asked, there's still a little room on the plate.
I suppose we're fascinated by the things we don't understand.
So it's time we sit down again. I'm your host, Greg McLaughlin.
I've seen your daily routine. You're not busy.
Along with my co-host and Card Squadron winger.
This is Greg Cass, a.k.a. Ion Cannon.
I'm only doing this because you're the best and because I need you.
We've already had breakfast, but now it's time to head back to the table. And we've saved a spot just for you.
Don't worry, Chewie. I think I know what he has in mind.
Ding ding, it's time for Second Breakfast.
Welcome to the Second Breakfast, a Rebel Base Card micro podcast series.
We're gonna need a bigger Pringles can.
I'm your host, Greg McLaughlin, and it's time for another helping of Second Breakfast. In this series, we're going to revisit Andor Season 2, episode by episode. And in this show, we're going to be looking at Episode 5, I Have Friends Everywhere, which is the case tonight, and it's also the middle of the second arc. Along with me, of course, as always, for another Second Breakfast, I've got Gregory Cass from IonCannon.com. His mic is very warm because we've been talking up something else that you have already heard by the time you heard this one. But Greg, it's great to see you again.
Good to see you as well. And you made me laugh by saying my mic is warmed up because I believe the forecast for tonight in Boston is wind chill -18. So I am literally sitting 4 inches from my space heater down here in my unfinished basement to record this. But hey, it may be a cold night, but the conversation's gonna be hot. Can't wait for it.
I think you change that each one, and I look forward and enjoy that every time you do that. However, we want to welcome back Jen Sopchockchai Bankert from the Long Take Review, who came in to talk Andor, and probably not in sub-frigid weather out there in Los Angeles. Jen, how has the weather been lately in your neck of the woods?
Why are you asking me that? Because I can't be. I'm trying to be polite and not talk about what the weather is here, so Greg doesn't feel bad in his freezing basement. No, it was actually unseasonably warm. It was like 82 degrees today.
Oh my
God. Sorry.
I'm going to do my fake laptop slam again, but I killed a Long Take Review recording.
You did.
That, so I won't really
Don't do that. That was a headache to edit afterwards when that happened. Yeah, so it's every nice and sunny, like the sands of Tatooine over here in California.
Somewhere out there, Colby is just having like an ice cream cone thinking about Stranger Things out there. That's going to be my headcanon for what Colby is doing at this point. Talking about hockey when it's like 82 degrees. I don't know. But at any rate. So we're here to talk about I Have Friends Everywhere. It's interesting to go back and revisit this because especially some of these, middle episodes, and now we're sort of in getting into the middle of the series, and you're trying to see where all these pieces are going to start connecting. Jen, when you went back and rewatched this, and may even say like how long it was since you'd seen it last, what were sort of the things that going through your head as you were watching this again?
So first of all, I want to thank you for the excuse to rewatch this because I think because it is the middle episode in one of the arcs, it I think is kind of probably given unfair treatment. I did go back and listen to the episode that you did with PT originally when this aired, just to be like, oh, I don't want to like retread the same topics that you went over there. And it's fascinating because given the 3 episode arc to talk about, you talked very little about anything that happened in this episode. So because all the exciting stuff, and this is typical of an Andor 3 episode arc, right? Like it's the middle one is the bridge to the big boom finale, usually in that 3rd episode. And so I'm really glad that I got to just zone in on this one. I hadn't watched this one, I think probably since I originally watched it when season 2 dropped on Disney Plus. So the big thing for me was I noticed so much more thematic work happening in this episode that I would never have noticed had I just been watching it as a part of the arc. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Well, I would. I also find it really interesting. I think you're right that the middle chapters benefit the most from this because you're not thinking about, oh, I'm orienting to this new situation, and then the big kind of finale of each arc within this. Although, I mean, I think I did a solid 30 minutes on what I think happened when they shut off the lights, but I won't retread that here. So I will say similar in spirit, but different from Jen. I think I found myself this rewatch thinking a lot more about the whole arc of the season, not even just this little arc. And in particular, that made me think a lot more about the Luthen and Clea scenes. And I was smiling to myself about how I had watched this really completely unaware that next episode Clea is going to blow your mind, and then a couple arcs from now she's going to skyrocket to the top of my favorite character lists on this show in some ways. So when you see kind of Luthen and Clea having their conflict and he's really berating her and talking down to her here, it was really fascinating to be able to fill in their relationship that we get in the flashbacks later, and also, you know, where she ends up and he ends up. He ends up, we kind of all knew where he would probably end up, but it was really great, and it's fun to get to you know, like Jen said, put it in the arc, see all those thematic connections, but then put it in the whole arc of the season as well. So, Greg, where did, I mean, I know you also prepared a separate 30 minutes on the turn the lights out scene, but what else stood out to you in this episode?
Well, it's a bunch of, you know, it's interesting. Yeah, it's a bunch of little setup scenes. And then, but what kind of gets lost is, you know, when Cassian has to go and get his, you know, his identity and his outfit and things like that. I completely forgot about that. I also kind of forgot about Lights Out, although, you know, it involves, you know, part of my favorite, you know, storyline is not only the Cyril and Deidre, but then we get another helping of Cyril and Edie Karn. And that's just, it's one of those, and these little bits you can just kind of forget about because you're kind of trying to remember the larger arcs. And of course, anytime you have, you know, Forrest Whitaker doing Saw Gerrera, it's everybody else and then him. Sometimes it feels like. And so I think just so much that was kind of packed into this, although I think, you know, there are a couple of like really standout scenes. You know, it's fun rediscovering this because they get so much more breadth.
Yeah, and for me in particular, like I didn't notice a lot of the parallels across the character storylines until I rewatched just this episode. So like, you know, seeing that Partagas and Dedra are really stringing along Cyril, and then Cyril's stringing along the Gorman, and then the Gorman are kind of stringing along Cassian because they're like, oh, we have this imperial source, and the dramatic irony there is incredible because we know it's Cyril and therefore is bad news, and that but Cassian doesn't know that. Nor would we, as we find out later, nor would he care. He'd be like, who are you? And then it's also kind of like the sizing up. I think one of my notes I put that the alternative title for this episode should be The Appraisal, because it's not just that the background story of that Greg was referring to of Clea and Luthen getting in an argument. What are they getting in an argument over? The fact that Skulden is found that one of his artifacts is a forgery, and that's thrown his trust in his whole collection, right? And so I think that is really a metaphor for what all the characters are doing. They're appraising each other and trying to figure out if they can trust one another. And you know, usually it's not good. It's just the overall impression. But it's everyone's trying to figure out if the other person is who they say they are, and really, and also if they're the real deal. And I mean that not just in a like, are you who you say you are you lying to me, but more in there's a thread throughout about like who's the real revolutionary, because there's a lot of accusations thrown across, you know, the Gorman and I can't remember his name now, the Papa Gorman is like,
Papa Gorman.
you're not much of a revolutionary, are you? Right? Because Cassian is kind of coming at it with an intellectual response of like, well, you don't know what you're doing. None of this is secure. You can't trust any of this. Don't do this. And the response is like, well, then you're not, if you think that, then you're not a real revolutionary, right? And then Saw Gerrera, towards the end of the episode, says to Wilman that like revolution is not for the sane, or like being a revolutionary is not for the sane, or something like that. So there's this really like heart versus mind kind of setup conflict of like, which I never, again, I would not have picked up on whenever I originally watched this, but because I'm honing in on this one episode, it's like, oh, there's actually a lot of the screenplay, unsurprisingly for this, is brilliant, and there's a lot of connections between everybody.
Yeah, everybody's so excited to get something going, right? Because you've got, Saw is always excited, and half the cheese falling off the cracker, as it were. You've got the Gorman front, and it's Caro Rylance and his daughter Enza Rylance. Thank you, because I just copied and pasted all the notes from the last episode. So that's the only reason it's even there. And then you've got Cyril so excited. Is like, is it wrong to say this is one of the best days of my life, kind of thing? And everybody else is like, oh man, you got to dial this back, dude. It's not going to be good for you. So everybody is just so excited. And then you, of course, have, poor Luthen going, I'm drowning in information. So it's like, I think Luthen's the only one who's like, no, I'm full. I'm good. I'm good right now. Things are just going nuts.
Well, I'll pick up the baton from both of those comments and say that there are so many wonderful scenes in this episode with two characters. On my Wheel of Time podcast, the ugly stepchild of my podcast that nobody talks about, but we talk a lot about the kind of model and TV shows. You used to hear about this a lot on The Office, where they had note cards with all the members who worked in the office, and they would just be like, Stanley and Oscar, let's see what happens, right? They just like mix and match. And there's some really interesting scenes in this episode where you get kind of two cards together that don't often come together. And so Luthen and Bix come to mind, right? Like when he goes to visit her, and it starts with her assuming this is somebody like to the end. There's a really like sharp, quick moment where she thinks Cassian has been killed, and he's like, "Oh, not that! Like, of course not that." It's like, whoa! Like I'd be really angry if I were Bix, and that had just happened. And then I would say Cassian, and not that you'd have a card for this on the TV show, but the hotel clerk. Like, that's a wonderful scene of the two of them in the room and kind of talking about, and to Jen's point, there is some of that appraisal going on. They're both trying to read each other and to figure out what they can say and what they shouldn't say in this context. And then the younger Rylance and Cassian in the cafe is just really wonderful writing, and the way Cassian turns that into a mentorship moment, but very insultingly, right? Like
he's so patronizing in this episode. It's insane. Like,
well, and I'll just throw in on that. I was struck a lot by Diego Luna's acting in this scene. He is really good across all these moments, and it's a great showcase of him. Which I love him. I love the character of Cassian, but Cassian often plays kind of second fiddle within these episodes. It's not as splashy as Saw Gerrera's scenes, but he was really good in those scenes.
Also great hairdo.
I mean, I would wear Gorman fashion too. Like if I could teach in Gorman fashion, I'd be there. I'm totally there for it.
I could picture that too easily. It's so good.
I mean, if I need a new screen name, it might be Cyril Karn's Gorman beret, right? Like that's just like when he put like, we're in I mean, who knows when we're recording, but we're kind of still in Avatar season, and it's like that whole theme of like going native. Like, what better sign for that than Cyril putting on his little beret and wanting to belong? I mean, I don't know, maybe a good friend of mine recently was talking about Darth Maul and how he always just wanted a friend. Isn't that what Cyril wants? He just wants a friend.
He certainly doesn't want another spider.
Okay, so one of my questions that I was going to ask you started as a facetious question. It was, why is Edie Karn in so much of this episode? With apologies to Greg, because I know how much you love her. So part of me was just going to, right. But then once I started thinking about how I would answer that question, it really became very deep in terms of Cyril's tragedy, right? Because to me, a lot of the scenes with Edie where she hilariously says, "Well, I'll he gives her the spider, and she's like, "I'll name it Cyril," and he's like, "That's an interesting choice." And and between the scenes with him and Edie, especially that scene where they're sitting together and he's eating cereal and she's just berating him constantly as usual, and then the scenes between him and Dedra really establish that the version of himself that he wants to be and aspires to be is just constantly under abuse. Like whereas the identity he is assuming as his cover story is the alternative life in which he has friends and is accepted and people are supportive of him and root for him. And it's just so sad because he never understands that. I think he never catches on. To him, his only end goal is to, impress the Empire and become this like super spy and rejoin the ISB and all that kind of stuff, right? And he never sees what's right in front of him, and it's just so incredibly sad.
Do we think I go back and forth when I rewatch the scene where his office is being, flipped by the ISB? Is he in on the gag? Or is he doing that on purpose, or was it just, and I kind of go back and forth because I can see it both ways. I mean, just to throw up like, hey, what are you doing? I'll talk to somebody. But then again, I'm like, I don't really know because, I don't know how they're, it's interesting how they kind of treat him.
I think he didn't know, because I think that's how they vetted him, right? Like they remember they scouted him to see if he was the right person to approach, and the mother is terrifying, which is such a fantastic line from the last episode. And so I think that's how they vetted him, and so he didn't know that was there. But then I think he is kind of savvy enough, and this gets to Jen's point, like he is living his best life in this episode in a lot of ways, where he plays into it because it helps him prove he's innocent, because why would he bug himself, or why would they bug him if he was a part of that? So it's really there. I really like that point, Jen, you just made, because it makes me think again a lot about, one way to read Cyril is just kind of modern toxic masculinity in this great way. And, among the many movies Jen and I have talked about lately is One Battle After Another, that has these models of like the pure macho machismo that like Cyril wishes he could be. He wishes he could be a lockjaw and thinks this is the way he could just, but he should be Benicio del Toro, whose character name I forget, which is he should just lean into the community and see that he's respected and that he's loved. And I completely agree with you. There's a life where he puts on his little fancy beret and goes to work every day, and he's just happy forever on Gorman. Well, as much as anybody's happy on Gorman after a few more episodes.
And a big old armory that is casting a shadow over the monument.
Mm.
So I think you can read it either way, I think, and I think that's what's interesting about it. To go back to your original question about is he overacting in terms of like being angry? Because on the one hand, I think it would make sense if he were playing it up, hamming it up, being upset that he's being investigated, because what we see later is that the Gorman learn about Morlano 1, and that he has a grudge potentially, or he has a reason to have a grudge against the ISB because because he's like, they read about his falling from grace kind of, and then and realize, oh, that's why he's on our side. That's why he's more likely to be on our side, because he just hates the ISB and he hates the Empire because of like all this stuff. And but the thing you have to remember is that Cyril doesn't know that they know that. Right. And so I don't that then brings me back to, oh, maybe he because the fun thing is that his personality is such that he could have easily had this temper tantrum just on his own and not as a part of any plan. And so yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Greg, but I do think if someone were to come along and say, no, he's making a big show of it so that they trust him, I would buy that too. I think you can argue both ways.
Unanswerable question, but I do. I think, every once in a while we get a listener who's like, stop saying the same things over and over again. The thing I want to keep saying over and over again is Cyril Karn is a wholly original character that just is one of the greatest achievements of this show. And I find him endlessly compelling for all the reasons Jen just articulated, that you don't know quite how to read him. He gets your sympathy, but then you're like, wait, I'm sympathizing with a fascist. What's going on here? And I can't. And so it's just like, I can't ever imagine another character that's been created like him, and it's really wonderful that we got him in this universe. Also, in other movie world, I think a lot of people ended up watching Jay Kelly on Netflix because they thought that was going to be like an Oscar contender movie. It didn't get any nominations, but Cyril Karn shows up for one scene, and it's so confusing. You're like, wait, that's a great actor, and you're just panning past him. Essentially, I think he says two things, so it's very funny. But he's so good in this, and kudos to the actor. Kyle Solar, right? I believe so.
Yeah, proof that despite what people say, there's still a barrier between TV and film.
So, Greg, what were some things, or what was something that you enjoyed diving back into in this episode?
Nothing. I don't care for this show. No,
right. Nice way to wrap this thing up then.
No. So one on my list was just Diego Luna really sparkled here, and there was the shot of him kind of leaning on the desk, I believe, and giving his fake name that was in one of the trailers, and he looks so good. To Jen's point about the hair, it's so good.
Very Sky.
So I will. Yeah. Oh man.
The way he leans in. And
the
puts
camera
his elbow
push
on the counter. Yep.
Oh man, yeah, it's movie star material. So I'll throw out Clea as Clea and Luthen's plotline as the one that really stood out to me, and I am anxiously awaiting the announcement of whatever Elizabeth Dulau's next project is, because somebody should scoop her up and put her at the center of a series or a movie or something. But I really loved in that plotline how it was. This goes to Jen's earlier point. It was such a mirror of the mentorship we saw between Saw Gerrera and Williman, and it was like the two sides of being a revolutionary. That their side is just the wild radical belief, like, yep, just suck the gas, let it burn, let's do this, and the very obvious metaphor that's the ideology, not just the literal gas. But in the Clea and Luthen one, the idea of how hard this actually becomes and how they are both completely overwhelmed. And I'm not excusing Luthen's lashing out at Clea, but it was like, it's clear that he's just become overwhelmed by the task. And he says he can't track it all. There's too many games, too many ploys, too many lies. And so, this unhinged moment where they're kind of breaking down was really compelling to me on the rewatch. And again, Clea, knowing where she's about to go, it's just incredible to see that she's still pretty humble and kind of quiet here, knowing that she's a complete badass just waiting to break out.
It does.
Well, and it's interesting. I was going to say, you mentioned earlier that knowing what we know now about where their storyline ends up makes this scene, their scenes in this episode, much more potent. And I do agree that, I think the first time I watched the scene where, and I think I remember people reacting to this at the time too, that when she's really pushing back, he's sort of like, people were like, doesn't she work for him? That's kind of rude. People didn't understand that how she was comfortable and familiar enough with him to be like, no, we're doing this. We got to stick to it. Kind of yelling at him. And, that makes so much sense now that we know that they're essentially like a father-daughter dynamic, right? Yeah, I think Yeah, that's the only thought I had about that.
And just shout out to anytime she's doing the radio DJ thing. Just endlessly compelling to
So
me.
good.
I need a super cut of like switch flipping and twisty things. Like all those was so great.
Oh, and the sound work in the opening.
Yes.
The title
yeah.
title card
Yeah.
where it's
Yeah.
like the score is kind of coming in and out as if it's a channel. Oh,
Yeah.
so good.
Yeah, and as a
I was like, I didn't remember this.
former radio operator in my military time, like putting the plugs and the things like that, I'm like, yeah, that really hits well to home. And then you start thinking about, what about Corellia 222 or Skolden 343? And you're going, some of these frequencies. But yeah, it's just, I think at some point when you get too out there's just so much chatter going on. It's interesting also because at this point you see Luthen kind of start to, like, he's not as confident as he was. He's really kind of fraying, and you kind of know what, at this point we kind of know the end could be nigh. But it's interesting because in season 1, especially when he first meets Cassian, how, confident he is, and he has all the angles out, and he's totally fine. Here there is just that frustration and that fatigue that sets in, and you're like, this is getting interesting.
Absolutely. And, Stellan Skarsgård probably going to win an Oscar this year.
Ooh.
Not sure. That's a questionable, but he's definitely in the hunt for it. And just, it's incredible to get him in Star Wars, and he's always so compelling as Luthen. Our co-host PT just sent us a meme. Was that today or yesterday? Of Stellan Skarsgård at his table at the Golden Globe Awards, looking sad and forlorn, while all the beautiful actresses next to him are smiling and taking selfies. And the meme said, when you've made your soul a sunless space,
it was
tomorrow
really good.
you'll never see. It was really brilliant. But he's such a talent as well, and like, I think why those scenes were so biting to me is because I'm upset that they are not working together well. And when he's angry, I'm really mad at him for being angry, and I'm really mad at her for letting him down. Like, I just want them to be such a team in lockstep. So they're just really well done.
Well, and
Also not a great look. I was gonna say, also not a great look if you compare that to the scene where he goes and talks to Bix, where he's acting like he's constantly, like, he's got his act together, and he's like, and she's the one that's gonna ruin everything because she's not. We need you healthy, like the way he repeats that, or she repeats that back to him, and being like, I know what you mean, I know you're what you're saying, and it's not nice, I don't like it. So yeah, it's interesting to see again, but we've seen from the beginning of the show that one of his skills is being able to change faces at the drop of a hat, right? Like that. I remember that scene where he looks in the mirror and smiles because he's trying to pretend to be the art dealer and not the hardened revolutionary. So yeah, I think it's just him changing. And again, in retrospect, makes so much more sense that he is vulnerable with Clea, given what we later find out about their relationship, right?
Yeah, then later the throwaway line, like, I spent a night in this apartment. It's like that's kind of like the last vestige of the Luthen that we think we know. But yeah, you're right, Jen. It's sort of like seeing that behind the veil, like, all right, this is just getting nuts. I'm kind of losing it. Hey, something I keep going back to in my head is sort of the line, I guess the reasoning for Caro Rylance, who is, with the Gorman Front trying to gather all this evidence because they think that the Empire is being run by a shadow government and that the Emperor is clueless of what's really going on. Man, that line has really got to hit home for a lot of folks. What say you?
I mean, yeah, that totally hits home. I mean, I'm the age I am, so I immediately thought of what everybody said when Dick Cheney was supposedly running the government behind George W. Bush's back. Such naive, innocent times. But it's so funny to me that that's a moment that also kind of proves they're not ready, because they've read all the signs and gotten it exactly wrong. The truth is that Palpatine is the mastermind running a secret government behind all of the ISB and manipulating all this, very directly affecting them, because this all goes back to presumably Palpatine feeding Krennic to get the Calkite off Gorman. So yeah, right clues, wrong conclusion. We write that on papers a lot, Jen, right? Like, oh, you picked out good evidence, but you didn't read it correctly.
Right. It's supporting the wrong conclusion. Yeah. you're reminding me that towards the end of the episode, Partagas says, but he's talking about, or no, so Cyril says about the Gorman, they are inexperienced but very eager. But then Partagas's reaction, he gives Dedra a look and he's like, who's that sound like? Right? And he says how often those attributes align. Right. And I feel like, again, like that's one of the main agendas of this episode, I think, in terms of moving the story forward, is establishing the Gorman as that eager but inexperienced force but then also arguing to what I said earlier in terms of like, are you a revolutionary because you're smart, or are you a revolutionary because your heart is in it and you're willing to do things that are insane and stupid? And I think that the rebuttal to the like, oh, they don't know what they're doing, they're eager but inexperienced, is but they believe in their cause so much, right? And they are so committed to it that is almost more powerful, even if they get stuff wrong. And obviously it ends in tragedy either way, but it's hard. It's hard not to think of the real world right now and people who probably don't know what they're doing, but still trying to do what's right, and protecting each other and helping their community and everything is like really, it's really powerful to see that. And I like that the screenplay defends that point of view, that defends that yes, you can make fun of them and call them stupid and naive, but at the same time, you can't doubt where their heart is.
Well said.
Well said. And how many times have I seen online lately how much the Gorman are on people's minds or while we're facing these crises in our country? And I think that we should never dismiss that. How many times did you see Mon Mothma's speech reposted last week? I mean, Mon Mothma not in this episode. There's a crime for this episode, but I think it's so powerful that we have a piece of Star Wars art that is helping us articulate how we feel in these unprecedented times. And I expressed this in our changing of the guard episode as we look to the future of Lucasfilm under new hands. I worry a little bit that we might never see something like Andor again. And that to me is the biggest tragedy of any future of Lucasfilm if we don't get back to this quality again. But it's a wonderful masterpiece. I don't have to express it as being afraid. I could just say it's really wonderful we have it, and it's fantastic.
Any pieces on the plate we'd like to kind of dive into before we kind of bring this one to a close? Like I said, being that the fact that it's in the middle of the arc, there's a lot of things that kind of start and then stop, but it seems like there was a lot of great pieces to this. Anything else we haven't brought to light yet?
I have a fun question about Rido. I just need to find the exact quote because I wrote it down. Oh, okay. So the Saw Gerrera says, this is his big monologue at the end of the episode, we're the Rido, we're the fuel, we're the thing that explodes when there's too much friction in the air. And that really reminded me, just like from a linguistic perspective, to we are the spark that will light the fire that will burn the First Order down. And
it's better
I just wanted to
that's
ask,
for sure.
I just wanted to ask, well, but it has that same kind of like this and then this, and that, like, it has a little bit of the same rhythm to it, but mostly I'm picking up on the we are the metaphorical thing, right? Like we are the fill in the blank. Which one do you ascribe to? Is it, or like how do you compare those two? Like, do you prefer we are the fuel or we are the spark?
I'm interested in merging them because there is a way in which I think the Rido, the gas, is that more like the Nemec Manifesto, like the general, like, the control can't happen. It's just the general atmosphere of the attempt to control. And then when the resistance says what it says, they have to be the spark that ignites the people who are feeling those feelings but not acting on them, right? Sorry, I taught Letter from a Birmingham Jail this morning, and one of the things that's really compelling about Letter from a Birmingham Jail is that Dr. King goes against the moderates most fiercely, right? That he's not interested in converting the racists. He knows he can't win those. He's not interested, but he wants to convert the moderates. And so when you say that, Jen, it really reminds, there's nothing moderate about Saw Gerrera, right? But he has to create that friction, which is also a theme in Letter from a Birmingham Jail, that creative tension that has to happen for real social change to ignite. So it strikes me that Saw Gerrera understands that he has to combust in order to move those moderates, those people who are kind of complacent. And the We Are the Spark, oh God, I feel bad messing up Last Jedi, but that is after the call. Has the call gone out from Leia? But by the time they say that, so Leia calls the galaxy and nobody answers, right?
Right, and then this is Poe. Poe is the one who says it as like a rallying, right?
In the cave, right?
Right.
So that is after. So it is, right?
Yeah,
so,
you're right.
So it's the same. Like, we have to light these moderates on fire. That sounds mean, but we have to get these people out of their complacency and to see this, and that's the only way we'll burn the First Order down. Yeah. Yes, that's right, because he's reacting to Luke walking out. So Leia has definitely made her call already. I'll send a personal letter to Rian Johnson. I really let him down tonight, and that just hurts my heart directly. So I retire. But
I was gonna say I didn't check any of that because I just assumed you'd be on top of it.
It's kind of the go-to phrase. What's interesting though, it's like when you hear it from Poe, there is that sort of hope that there is that they will make it beyond that. When Saw clearly is like, no, this is our job, is to do it, and we don't expect to live. So it's interesting that there is sort of there's purpose versus hope, right? Where it's like, I think one is clearly more nuts and bolts, and the other is more ideology, I guess. They're both the same, but one is definitely going like, no, this is what I got to do, and the other is like, no, we got to do this. Let's put on a play. Sorry, that's wrong. I'm getting into a musical now.
but yeah, the word choice. And sorry, I have the advantage if I wrote down both quotes. So the word choice definitely corroborates what you're saying, because Saw's version says explodes, right, and then Poe says that they'll light the fire, right? So like explosion is much more violent imagery than lighting a fire. That sounds nice and happy and hopeful. And inspirational, right? Whereas his is like nihilistic, where he's like, just breathe in the Rhino. We're all doomed anyway. Right?
Yeah.
Just suck it up.
Boy, and you hear both attitudes today as we were talking about those connections to real life. I do also think it's important to note that Saw's right. Like, he gets it in a way. I think Saw and Luthen know they are not for the final stage of the rebellion. They have to be there. It is, I've made my soul a sunless space, right? Like, I will die to protect a sunset that I will never, or a sunrise that I'll never get to see. It's all of that same ethos, and it's important that they are here at the start of this movement and that they can't be at the end. You need Mon Mothma looking much less stylish and with a much worse haircut, and then she can be the leader moving forward.
Well, then also you see Saw's last, appearance in Rogue One when that shock wave is coming, and he finally then decides to quit the Rito. It's like, well, I'm glad you started your 12-step, but you're a couple steps too late to let it go. But at any rate,
Go ahead, Jen. You first.
I was going to say, and those two characters in particular, they've arguably suffered longer than all the other characters in the story, right? So, like, because part of that monologue that I was just quoting, the part that comes right before it is this extended story where he's talking about when he's, which essentially is like an episode of the Clone Wars where he's like growing up and suffering all this abuse, and how he was like enslaved on his planet and all that kind of stuff. So, and Luthen, we learn later, right, through the flashbacks in the later episode, that he had a similar thing where he's been under the Empire's thumb for so long that's how he's made this calculation that like it's okay for him to not see the sunrise.
And Saw almost does Hamilton, which I throw in for Frank to express to Amy Mulder, because I know she and I are the Hamilton fans. That he like you almost hear it, right? I was younger than you are now, and then I immediately was like, when I was given my first command, like I was there, I was ready to sing, because I still believe in Lin-Manuel Miranda, despite my better judgment. So The silly thing I wanted to point out. So the other day when my kids had their second snow day, and my wife and I were both like, "No, we need to work today. You need to entertain yourselves." I gave my kids a big bucket of Star Wars Micro Machines that were 50% 1996 and 50%. I think 2016, and it reminded me I have all these little partisan X-wings from Rogue One that are the black and silver pattern, and this episode we finally see them in action. It's like, oh man, I mean, Greg, you referenced Constable Zuvio in our other episode tonight, and that's the same thing. It's like I had all these, I'm like, wow, there's new black and silver X-wings, can't wait to see what they do, and they get blown up parked outside Saw Gerrera's cave. So it was really cool to kind of see those in action, and I believe that freighter is a kind of Rebels design, and I think we even see one in Rise of Skywalker as well. So it's great when they throw in those little bits. That was my last thought, my silly thought. That's why I didn't want to cut off Jen's smart thought.
Jen, are you going to go back I know that you have a lot of Oscar season stuff to take care of, but and it'll be quite a festive evening when it's time for the Oscars, but does this kind of make you want to pick up and keep going with Andor season 2, or do you feel that at this point, and this is something I guess we'll be asking our guests going forward, is this kind of make you want to go back and rewatch the whole thing or pick up where we left off?
It does definitely make me want to keep going and to get to the end. Because what's interesting about this episode, taken in isolation, yes, it is part of a 3-episode arc, but it is also arguably the beginning of the multi-arc story of Gorman, right? Mm-hmm. And that cuts across this arc and the next one. And so for that reason alone, I want to keep going. I mean, in general, I just want to keep going. I do think to refer back to what we were talking about earlier, like the timeliness and kind of the ability for this to process what's happening in the real world through the show, I think that would make it a therapeutic watch on its own, regardless of whether I watched from here on out versus started over. I think it would serve that purpose.
I think it is true that well, I guess maybe this is an apology to you, Jen. I think this is probably the weakest episode in the weakest arc of season 2, and of course the quality is really high anyway. Like that still means you're better than the majority of television shows, but I think it is because it's so much working towards the next episode, and then that this arc is an arc on its own, but really is meant to set up the third arc, and then all of that fits into the larger show in general. So it is an interesting one on its own. And it makes me want to keep going just because, well, for one, it's not a great Bix episode, and she becomes so great by the end. I mean, look, we all like getting high and watching morning TV, but maybe give her a little more to do. But the show redeemed. I think when we reviewed this arc originally, I'm sure, Jen, you just listened, I was like, I don't know, this seems bad. But I think the character goes better places and gets a great ending. So I want to see it. I mean, I guess I'll keep going, maybe because we have to keep recording these, but I would anyway.
PT called. I want to give credit where credit is due. There were a lot of speculative statements made on that episode, and the one that ended up really being true was like, what if the surprise is that Bix survives?
Yeah.
And that ended up being true. So
well done, PT.
Yeah.
Spoilers. Jeez, Jen.
I also know that
second breakfast. You can't spoil second breakfast.
I also know that good apologies start with, I guess, don't start with, I guess this is an apology. I would say, I think that once you start with that phrase, yeah, it's always a red flag. It kind of takes it down. All right, so we can let you guys get back to the Oscar season, Jen. Where can people find you and the long take, and what should they be doing to get ready for the Oscars?
Great question. So you can find me on Instagram, Threads, and Blue Sky at Sopchockchai, Sopchockchai, and you can find the show, The Long Take Review, wherever you get your podcasts, or on social media at The Long Take Review. I host it on my Substack, thelongtake.substack.com. Occasionally written reviews, so you can when Mall starts up, I'll hopefully be doing reviews there. So depending on when you're listening to this, that might be relevant. And actually, I really want to review Wonder Man. I don't know when I'm going to find time to do that. But
Yeah,
I'm
I
a
was gonna
couple
ask you
episodes in, and I'm really liking it. And I'm just like, I hate that Marvel just dumped this entire season, and without fanfare. And I mean, I understand why, but so if you go to Substack, you get my written reviews when they appear, and the episodes of the Long Take Review. To get ready for the Oscars, I would say a good place to start. We now know the Best Picture 10. Start making your way, and most of those surprisingly are available to watch at home. Not that we at the Long Take Review prefer that for you, but we are realistic and understand that some people prefer that. So that's where I would start. And actually, one of my recent articles about the Oscars, I can't remember which one now. I think it was when I predicted which movies would be in the Best Picture 10, which was 100% correct, not to brag. It's the first time that's ever happened. I'm usually off by one. But actually say where you can find all of the movies. So go to my Substack, and this is not self-promotional. It's just very practical. Go to my Substack, find that article about the Best Picture, my Best Picture predictions, and then you'll find where to watch all those. So that's it. Because I used to, back before I started podcasting, that is what I used to do. I used to wait till the nominations came out like a normal, sane person, and then I would watch all the Best Picture nominees, and then I would be happy watching the Oscars, and then it just escalated from there. So.
And also, you got plenty of time because the Oscars aren't until Sunday, March 15th. So plenty of time, even though this one obviously will be be coming out in February. Still plenty of time to watch the Oscars. What did I read that Conan O'Brien is the host of the Oscars this year?
Second year in a row.
Yeah.
Team Coco.
All right. Great.
And he co-starred in a nominated film this year. Did not get nominated himself, but he's in If I Had Legs, I'd Kick You. Starring Star Wars star Rose Byrne, who people will remember as Corday, who sheds a single tear in the middle of Attack of the Clones.
Man,
right?
he's
yeah,
good.
I have that right. I need to market a 6 Degrees of Kevin Bacon game that's just Star Wars actors and things. I think we could find a market here. I will second Jen's recommendations for continuing, and I will also note if you're working on those 10 and you really liked this episode and Andor in general, check out Sentimental Value, an absolutely wonderful film that stars Stellan Skarsgård as a problematic father. What's more Star Wars than problematic fathers, right? And really a great performance by him, and 3 really talented actresses make up the primary cast of that. It's a fantastic movie. And you can find me talking about movies on Letterboxd at Eye on Canon, and every once in a while posting the weird movie related merchandise I buy on Instagram, also at Eye on Canon, EYEONCANON. Greg, thank you so much.
No, these people are all over the place doing really good jobs out there, and I am looking forward to the mashup between the Long Take and the Colby Cast, because I know that Colby and Jen will be talking Wonder Man. If they haven't already talked about this, guess what, Colby? You're going to be doing Wonder Man with Jen, and you're going to have that, and I want to listen to that because I want that in my podcast ears. Speaking of which, Colby will return to the Rebel Base Card podcast in our next episode of Second Breakfast as we take on the episode 6, What a Festive Evening. But I want to know out there, what do you think of this episode of Andor? What were some of your takeaways? What were some things you liked and didn't like? Yeah, it was kind of a short episode, so this is a shorter episode. I'm sure Jen's like, wait, we're done already? Wait, where's the next hour where we discuss Edie Karn? And Greg, why didn't you bring up Edie Karn once? I did it. I made it happen. We snuck it in right before the end of this episode. Space Cereal. If you want to go back to our Andor episodes where I did mark off a bunch of Space Cereal names. I won't repeat them now because I can't find my note. but I'm thinking about them in my heart. Anyway, but you can reach out and find the Rebel Base Card on all the socials: X, Instagram, Facebook, Threads, Blue Sky, Substack. I was working on an article on the Star Wars Weekly ones the other night because I'd gotten a couple issues in, and that's going to be a fun one. I can't wait to finish that one. But anyway, you can also find me on all the Topps digital apps: Star Wars Card Trader, NBA Collect, BUNT, and all that kind of stuff at Cornfed Tech. And you can also help out the show. You can rate us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can go to the TeePublic store, and where you can find a Second Breakfast T-shirt. Go wear it proudly, and then not get beat up for your lunch money. Anyway, nope, that didn't work out either. But you can help out.
I was just going to say, while we're talking about March, my birthday's coming up March 9th, and I still don't have a Second Breakfast T-shirt. So if every listener could just send me one, then I'll have a whole new outfit. So perfect. Thank you so much.
All the colors, do all the variants, kids. All right. Anyway.
Coordinate so I have all the colors, please. I don't want doubles. Come on. Let's get it together.
Anyway, all right. So for Greg Cass and Jen Sopchockchai Bankert, I'm Greg McLaughlin, and we are done with this Second Breakfast. I'm pushing back the plate, folks. I am full. I hope you are too. Hope you enjoyed it, and we'll talk soon. This podcast is not affiliated in any way with Topps, Disney, or Star Wars, nor is it endorsed by Disney or Lucasfilm, and is intended for entertainment and informational purposes only. All names and sounds and any other related items are properties of their respective trademarks and or copyright holders here in the U.S. and abroad. The official Star Wars website can be found at www.starwars.com.
That's it.